Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Raw Show with Michael McDonald and a very special guest. We have Ajit Nawalkha joining me today. Ajit, thanks for joining me on the show.
I am excited to join you, Michael. How's everything going?
It's going really well. So for the people that have no idea who you are, would you be able to introduce yourself and tell us all how you spend your time?
Absolutely. So my name is Ajit, like you said, Ajit Nawalkha. I come from a little town in India called Jaipur. I was born there. I grew up there, spent the greater part of my life there until I decided that I need to travel and learn around the world, which led me to a little company at that time called MindValley, where I started as an intern. This is about 10 years ago, and went through my journey in that company and kind of started several companies in partnership with the company and outside the company as well. Now I'm co-founder of, and most of my time is focused on a brand called Evercoach, which is also known as MindValley Teach. It's the vertical of MindValley that focuses on educators, coaches, trainers, and entrepreneurs to focus on bringing about ideas that have positive messages in the area of education. So that's kind of where most of my time goes. Apart from that, I'm a husband, I'm excited, I'm a friend, I'm a traveler, and I spend a lot of time reading and learning.
All right, cool. So for people to get a bit of background on yourself, would you be able to share with me and our listeners where you were born and what it was like for you growing up?
Absolutely. I was born in India. I was born in a city called Jaipur. It's a small town, so when you think colors, dance, music, all that kind of stuff, and you imagine palaces around it and so forth, that's Jaipur for you. Jaipur is very much a very cultural, palace-filled city where a lot of tourists come. And I grew up in that city with all the culture and color around me, but at the same point of time, while I was growing up, we were challenged a little bit. I come from really humble beginnings, where we had, my parents, wonderful parents, but at the same point of time, were, let's just say, not affluent, and we didn't have a lot of abundance of space and wealth and money and so forth. I grew up in a house where there were 22 other people, which were my cousins and my extended family, my grandparents and my grandparents' brothers and their families and so forth. It was a big family that I grew up in, and that's what my childhood looked like. It was very much based on. It had a lot of challenges in context of space and abundance, which kind of was the way I was conditioned early on in life, where my priorities were very much about saying, how do I take myself and my family out of this state of challenge to a state where we can be comfortable and can be abundant.
Right, so what caused that kind of mindset in yourself then? So living with 22 people in one house, it must have had a lot of challenges and a lot of things that you had to do just to get by, I guess. But what caused you to want to change that? What caused you to want to improve it or to enhance it? Because I'd imagine from a young age you might not know any different at that point, or maybe that's wrong, but what caused the shift in yourself?
So the shift that happened for me was when I was in my teens. In my teens, there was, so in India, there's always some guest that is over at the house. There's always, we say guests are like gods in India. And so we respect them a lot. We're always inviting people and there's always somebody over. So one of the days, because we were living in a house of 22 other people, we were 23 in total. Basically, nobody really had, like, kids didn't have their own rooms, neither did, so our kids' room, or me and my brother's room, was our playroom, our study room, and if guests came over, that was our guest room. And there was one specific event that I can recall, where one of my uncles was over, and as they were staying the night, our bedroom, which me and my brother used to share, which was also our study room in the day, became the guest room. And so my uncle was also sleeping at the house. And in one mattress, when you divide, when it's designed for two people and you try to have three people sleeping, it can get really, really tight. So like brothers are, me and my brother were fighting for space, because we were like, oh, we can't really fight with our uncle, but we could fight between ourselves, because I wanted a little bit more space and he was like an elder brother wanting more space. And we were kind of arguing, playing, but like more fighting than playing, really. So my mom walks in and kind of tells me I should go to sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she was just being concerned that there is a guest over and it's not looking nice and so forth. And I started arguing. I was like, Mom, but I have no space. I can't just go to sleep. They're like, look, he's just squeezing me in. So, and don't judge, it's just Indian culture. She walks across the room and gives me one tight slap across my face and says, just go to sleep. Right? And it was tough love, but at that time, it was heartbreaking for me. So I kind of squeezed the pillow right next to me, put my head down on the pillow, started bawling. And I don't know what time I went to sleep, but when I woke up, my pillow was still wet. And I have that vivid memory of recalling exactly how that made me feel when I woke up, because that was the day when I said to myself, or that was the day when at least I remember that I said to myself for the first time that this can't be my life. It needs to change. And that also told me that I'll have to make these decisions for myself. Nobody else can, because nobody else knows better. Nobody else knows my story better. Nobody else really knows what's going and happening on for me inside. You can estimate and hope for knowing what's really happening inside, but you don't really know. And that kind of, I think, changed. Not I think. I mean, I know changed my life from there on.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Is there anything that happened for yourself, like the first couple of steps to make that happen? Because there are a few people out there that listening that probably haven't gone through the similar experience to yourself, but they have had this defining moment that's given them that energy, that realization, if you will, of I've got to change. Like this can't stay as it is, and I've got to do something about it. And there could be people that still haven't acted on that, but from the experience that you've had, and then you all of a sudden you're at Evercoach and you're at MindValley, and I think there's a fest within MindValley as well, which is amazing. You've gone from the position that you were in when you were a teenager to having actually done quite well for yourself. So what was the starting point like for you to actually get moving with that? Because there are some people that do it and there are some people that aren't. So what was the defining factor for you?
Thank you very much for the acknowledgement, Michael. The defining factor, I think, and it probably holds true for most of us, if not all of us, is the ability to stick with the decision that you've made, or the ability to first make the decision, of course, and secondly, to stick with it. I think for me, and again, there were 23 people in the house, so there's a few members of my family that still stay in the same house, and they're still going through life as they are going through life. It's not that my experience is any different to theirs. My decisions were different to theirs. My drive was different to theirs. So first is making the decision and knowing that decision is true in your heart, and knowing that if you get down to it, you will make anything come true. And that is true for everyone. I'm no special human being than anybody else. If anybody decides a particular outcome for their lives and really decide, not decide to say, oh, I made the decision, but really decide in their hearts, they can make that change in their lives. That was my first, I would say, first step to creating that change. Was I made the decision to say, no, this is not acceptable. This cannot be my life. And honestly, that decision got me to make certain other decisions as life went by. My decision to say, hey, I'm not going to be another engineer because that's not going to give me happiness, and I'm not willing to sacrifice my freedom for life just for a few dollars because I wanted freedom. And I knew that in my heart because that was my first track. It's like all Indians to become a doctor and an engineer, right? So that was my track. But I said, no, that's not what I want. And so that was a big decision in an Indian family where you're dependent on your parents in India who are relying very much on you to create success in life. You say, no, I'm not going to take the beaten path. It was a hard decision, but it was a decision based on what my final outcome I wanted it to be, to leave India, to come to a different country in a startup. At that time, MindValley was a small little company, kind of, like it wasn't the name that you see today. It was a small company in Malaysia running out of a house, actually. To make that decision was a tough decision. Now, retroactively or looking behind, everybody can say, well, it seemed obvious. You should have made that decision. But it wasn't so obvious when I actually made that decision. And decisions like that followed. And I think the first thing, if there is somebody listening to this call right now and is not able to make that switch or feels like, oh, I want to make the switch, what do I do next, is really decide, like really make that commitment, really be in your heart and say, do you really want that change? Because when you really want that change, you will start to shift things around the way you've never done before. And that was my truth too. I started to shift things around. I took a lot more chances because very honestly, I had nothing to lose. I mean, what's the worst that could happen is probably the question I asked most often. And never, the worst was never worse than what I had already lived growing up. So for me, the decision was very, very straightforward. And that decision kind of held me together for all this while.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's a whole host of different questions and things that you could have asked yourself along the lines to make sure that those decisions were. I guess, I mean, a lot of people do look back in hindsight and go, as you say, oh, well, obviously you should have made that decision, because they kind of see where you're at now and go, well, certainly the decision is easy. Well, it probably is easy now. Like if you go from making the decision to where you are now, and there's no like time passing by for that, then it is obvious, isn't it? But if now, as you say, it wasn't always like that. You've got to start somewhere, and you've got to start at the bottom, as everybody does, I guess. So what was running through your mind when you decided to do something that your parents didn't want you to do? Now, I'm asking this from the perspective of, I was quite similar in that I wanted to do my own thing. My family had ideas, if you will, of what they wanted me to do. Now, it wasn't exactly doctor or engineer, because I wasn't overly smart in those particular subjects. But I think they started to realize that as I got older, like from like 14 to like 16 or 17, where it was like, okay, he's not going to be X, Y, and Z anymore, so we need to try and see what he is actually good at and do it that way. So it started to ease off a little bit as I got a bit older, but I still had these moments of, I want to do something, and it's almost like nobody else wanted me to do it. Like it was just mine. It was just my idea, just what I wanted to do, and there was nobody else in the room that wanted the same. So what was going through your mind when you were making that shift away from doing what your family wanted you to do, or what the important people in your life wanted you to do?
Well, one thing that, and I can't really trace back where I got that belief of saying that I know better, but I did have this insane belief, and I still have that I know what's best for me, and nobody else can really tell me what's best for me. I know better, not in context of I know better about life. That's not my approach. I'm a very learning-centered person, but I do have always had a belief of saying I know better about my life than anybody else does. I know better about myself than anybody else does. And so my approach when I would be challenged in context of, hey, this is not the right thing, this is the wrong thing, or you should be doing this, you should be doing that, which used to happen all the time. It still does sometimes, but not as much anymore, because I think people have seen, like people around me have seen seen how my decisions have helped me reach certain levels. And I'm not talking only about in context of abundance, but in context of life, in context of impact, in context of how I live my life, how my relationships are, how my friends are, all that type of stuff. It's very, very much a complete life type of thing. And so now I don't get those types of questions, but early on in the stage, it was mostly my argument towards anything was, but this is what I would love to do. This is what I would like to do. And it had not really a context of, will it make more money? Will I be more successful? Will people see me more? None of my decisions were really based on that. My decisions were mostly based on, what would I love to do? What would I like to do? And because those questions, I think, and that being my primary question, when we went into an argument, my answer to pretty much any of their requests was, but I will be happier not doing what you're just asking me to do. I'll be happier doing what I am suggesting that I would like to do, because that's what I would like to do and I want to be happier. And that's all my argument really was pretty much all the time. Now, I must acknowledge that my parents are very considerate, especially my father. He's been an inspiration. He's been a really supportive father. He told me his limitations early on in my career and said, hey, son, I might not be able to fund any of your businesses and so forth, so you'll have to figure it out all by yourself. What I can do is I'm here for you, right? So it was kind of very straight up, where he knew that he doesn't have the means to support my journey, but he is there emotionally and spiritually for me. My mom was different though. My mom definitely thought I was on the wrong path and I'm not going to be okay or successful or happy or whatever that is. She always thought that I was going in the wrong direction, until, of course, about 3-4 years ago, when we were able to, she could see how far I've come. And finally, she was able to realize that as random as my action seemed to be, because they were in alignment with me, I turned out to be a happier and in the world's view, a successful kid.
That seems a little strange, at least to me, as someone that's been following MindValley and Evercoach for a while, is that it was only 3 or 4 years ago when your mum or your mother decided that, you know, it was a good choice that you made. I mean, from the perspective of someone that's kind of followed your work somewhat for a while, it comes as a surprise, at least to me, from the outside looking in, that it was reasonably recently that your family started to really grasp what was going on. I mean, was it to do with like them still wanting the best for you? I mean, I know all parents do, or was there an element of it was something that you did, which meant that maybe they weren't aware of what was going on? What was the journey like between the parents kind of not accepting what was going on, and then all of a sudden going, yeah? Was it a case of you sort of showing them what was happening, or was it just purely the mindset shift for your parents?
Well, I think it's if it would be hard for me to place an event, but for the longest time, for the first 7, I mean, till the time I was almost 30, so this is about 4 years ago, it was always that I was doing so many items that they didn't understand, even if I would try to explain it to them, that they didn't see that I was actually doing something that was useful. Because, you know, internet's like a weird place for them. They don't really get what's happening. They don't really know what I am doing in that ecosystem, because I'm not really a technical person. I don't really have a degree. So they were always confused. Why would anybody hire me? You know, all that type of stuff. So they had their own building and understanding type of thing. So they were like, let's try to understand what he does. But eventually, I think what started to happen is I started doing my own videos too, because I was speaking at Zenpreneur, speaking at different events. Because before, I was the background guy, right? I was the guy who ran the show, but I was never really in the front. Like, you couldn't see who Ajit was or what he did. You would only know of me if you knew of me and if you knew about what I did in different roles in different companies of mine. It's very recent that I started showing up as the face of one of our brands, actually a few of our brands. And that's kind of where I think the shifts probably started to happen, because they started to see actually me speaking and me, something that they can see, feel, understand. Because before that, it was just this black box that seemed to be a temporary career from their perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, excuse me. At least from my perspective, obviously, when you do start getting busier, it can seem like you kind of spread quite thinly, even though as we know, as people that are doing the work and out there doing these kinds of things, we put things in place to allow us to do a lot of things at the same time. Like we schedule things in, we work hard, we do block out time and things. So from our perspective, it just feels like, well, we're just doing our thing, right? But from people that are observing it, and we're bouncing around and we're doing this, that, and the other thing, it can at least look like we're doing so much. And then as someone that might be in that position anyway, they might not feel like it's making a big difference, I guess, in the first instance, particularly if you're starting up. It can feel like you're spinning your wheels to a certain extent and not really moving forwards very much. But then when they do start realising, hang on, he is actually doing things, he is actually making waves with the work that he does, I guess it's more about it's almost like a consistency thing, and then you do actually start being a bit more serious with it. At least in my experience, the more serious I got, the more serious people around me was starting to see that I was about the businesses that I was running. And it was like, okay, well, clearly it's important to him. So, I've got to maybe pay a bit more attention, so to speak. That's what it was from my own experience anyway. So we're nearing the end of your time. I do want to respect your time, Ajit, of course. So, last couple of questions, really. What you've got MindValley, and you've got Evercoach and A-Fest, and probably a whole host of other things that I don't know of. Where do you see education heading, and what are your thoughts on what you've done so far and where you see it going in the future?
Well, I think education is becoming more and more mainstream. Some of the ideas that we've been able to promote ourselves, and a lot of other educators have really brought out, we have kind of tried to communicate that education is not learning at school. It's education for life. Education is something that as you go further in life, you probably need more and more of, because it allows you to really elevate to new standards, if I may, for yourself, to understand yourself better and get past different emotions and conversations and challenges that life may present in much better ways and much more comfortable ways. And you can definitely really truly live up to your potential and be extraordinary if you choose to be. So as the future of humanity, we feel education is going to be a big piece in that, especially with the coming technological advances that we have made as humanity, where we have found ways to automate certain tasks and really be able to expand on the abilities that we have had as human beings for the longest time. Learning and education, ability to get more data but make more sense out of that data, I think is going to only increase and expand. And that's what we're most excited about in the coming times, as people get more and more aware, more and more interested, more and more excited, and more involved in creating true change in lives and communities and different realities. And we are very excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the concepts that you're creating are only getting bigger, really. So before we ask the last question, where would people be able to go if they wanted to find out a bit more about yourself and what you've got going on? This is your chance to share links and websites and things that you think could benefit the listeners.
Well, depending on what you are and what are you focused on as a listener, one of the best places to go is mindvalley.com, which is MindValley.com. If you're focused on learning and becoming a better individual, an extraordinary individual in life generally, it's a great place to get started. If you're in the business of education and training and coaching, a great place to get started is evercoach.com, EVERCOACH, evercoach.com. And you can find details about our events. You can find details about the books that we put out at programs and different forums that we have created for us to be able to spread great ideas from great philosophers and authors. So you're welcome to come join us.
All right, awesome. Well, last question for you, Ajit, and I ask everybody, and this is the part where we can blow the thing wide open now. So it doesn't really matter what the answer is. We can go personal, we can go funny, you name it. And the last question is, what would you like the world to know about you that it doesn't already know?
Oh, that's a tricky question. What would I like the world to know about me that it already doesn't know? Well, I'll actually say something, and this has come up recently, and it comes up very often with me, where people think that I've got it all together, and I haven't got it all together all the time. And I want to say that not only in context of me, but in context of human beings generally, because what happens a lot of times when we are on the journey of becoming someone or fighting through or trying to get to the next level of our own lives, we tend to look up to different people and we feel like they have it together. We feel like they figured it out, that we feel like that they don't have any problems, or they have it because they are them. And that is true, they have it because they are them. But at the same point in time, it's not that they have it together. None of us have it together. We're all finding the same challenges and working on the same problems. We have the same insecurities and uh, same concerns as everybody else does. It just shows up differently in our lives, and we've found different ways to deal with it. But as the whole dialogue that a lot of us get into, that puts it into a state of comparison and puts it into a state of saying, well, they can figure it out, I can't. I want to kind of address that, and I hope everybody that is listening understands that as well about me and about everybody else that you might think have got some extraordinary success in their life, is that we all have our insecurities and none of us have figured it all out. We're figuring it out like you are. And yeah, I don't think I ever shared that before, but it's interesting because I was just writing an email to my group, and I kind of wrote the same thing. So it's something that I was about to say.
All right, Ajit. Well, I just want to say that I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. I appreciate the dent that you're making, and I'm very grateful you were able to take the time to be on the show. I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you very much for doing this podcast. You're doing awesome.